Despite adding Stephon Diggs this week via trade, should the Texans continue to invest in wide receiver and prioritize drafting one in the draft? Welcome into the channel. I'm Cody Stoots. Let's talk some Texans and let's talk about the NFL draft just a few weeks away. And the Texans adding to the wide receiver room with Stephon Diggs this week via a trade, getting him from the Buffalo Bills and giving the Texans a nasty 1, 2, 3 with Diggs, Nico Collins, and Tank Dell. But could they continue to add to the wide receiver room and maybe even prioritize adding to the wide receiver room with the NFL draft? And I say they absolutely should consider it when it gets here in just a few weeks. And here's why. The contract situation in the wide receiver room does not have a lot of long-term security as we talk about it right now. The Texans adjusted Stephon Diggs' contract, making it a one-year commitment to Diggs. And certainly if he plays well, it'll be an easy conversation to have about trying to extend Stephon Diggs. But the Texans already had him in a long-term contract. They decided to make it a one-year commitment for Diggs' sake, and I can't quite see the benefit for the Texans in that, but it's only 2024 for Stephon Diggs. So the contract situation for him, a one-year situation. Noah Brown is back on a one-year contract. That's a depth piece for the wide receiver room. And, of course, Nico Collins, despite a conversation maybe about an extension for Nico Collins, he's set to have his contract expire at the conclusion of the 2024 season. So with three of your top four wide receivers on one-year deals, having somebody ready just in case is a worthwhile thing to do for the Houston Texans. If two of those four players leaves at the end of the season, say Diggs and Noah Brown move on and you re-sign Nico Collins, hey, look at that. Draft pick from the 2024 NFL draft is ready to be wide receiver number 3 for this Texans team. And maybe they don't miss a beat, even though a guy like Diggs leaves in free agency or a guy like Noah Brown leaves in free agency. And sure, there's options on the roster right now for wide receiver 5 and wide receiver 6. And some of those players have contracts that extend past 2024. Xavier Hutchinson and John Mechie are probably the best example of that. But Hutchinson and Mechie in their first playing years in the NFL didn't look like great options and aren't guys that I would be ready to turn to in 2025 or really even turn to in 2024. Because here's another thing you need to think about with the way the Texans have put together their wide receiver room. Tank Dell got hurt last season. Nico Collins has had injury concerns in his career. Noah Brown was hurt at the beginning and the end of the season last year. And Stephon Diggs, at the early 30s age that he is, played through a lot of injuries in Buffalo. So durability concerns are there in 2024. So we talked about 2025, 2026 from a contract standpoint. In 2024, there's questions about the durability of this wide receiver room for the Texans. And yes, Robert Woods is still on this team. He was hurt in 2023. Xavier Hutchinson and John Mechie. Are you ready to have Hutchinson or Mechie play in 2024 in one of the key spots for this team? Sure, I'm not giving up on those players, but the likelihood of them stepping into that role in 2024 seems low. I do trust a pretty deep wide receiver draft to find a player that could help the Houston Texans quite a bit in 2024, should they need to help in 2024 because of injuries to, say, Noah Brown or Tank Dell or Nico Collins or even Stephon Diggs. Despite the fact that Diggs plays a lot of games, he does get banged up from time to time, as his time in Buffalo would indicate. So contracts, durability, I mean, those are both reasons why you would think to add a wide receiver. And I know what you're thinking to yourself. Cody, they have 3 really good wide receivers. Noah Brown is a nice backup, and they've got plenty of options for the 5th, 6th wide receiver spot. They need help on defensive tackle. They need depth on linebacker and safety and maybe cornerback and even throw one at the offensive lineman. Why would you prioritize wide receiver over some of these other positions? Well, just because I'm prioritizing it doesn't mean that I'm advocating for them to use the 42nd overall pick on a wide receiver. though I do believe that's where the best wide receiver is going to be available. Should they think about one, the Texans have 4 other selections in the top 127 picks. They've got 2 picks in the 4th round, picks 123 and 127. They've got the 59th overall pick, and they've got the 86th overall pick. It doesn't have to be 42 overall. Heck, it doesn't even have to be 59 overall. Maybe it's the 3rd round pick or one of those 4th round picks on a wide receiver, but I would still consider drafting a wide receiver with one of those 5 picks in the top 127 selections that the Texans currently have because of durability issues, long-term contract conversations with some of these players that are the top 4 wide receivers for this Texans team. And it's a deep wide receiver draft. So even though it might be the 12th or 14th or 16th wide receiver that the Texans are drafting, it still could be a really talented player, a player that on any given year maybe is the 10th best or 12th best player. So you're getting some good value when you invest in that wide receiver spot as well. Is it crazy to use 42 overall? It's not crazy, but it doesn't seem like it's the total appropriate use of assets. You'd like the 42nd overall pick to not be the 5th wide receiver on the depth chart and maybe be a special teams contributor. That's not quite why you use the 42nd overall pick on a player. You'd like a guy to be a rotational defensive tackle, a rotational linebacker. Heck, maybe push for cornerback snaps early on, something like that at 42, and maybe even that at 59. But 86, 123, 127, still think about a wide receiver. And you can get a little bit more risky with the selection. If you want to go with a little bit more of a boom or bust player, or you want to go with a little bit more of a player that needs some seasoning in 2024 to really be ready in 2025, I think about a player like Xavier Legette from South Carolina, who's had one really good year playing wide receiver at college. Maybe he needs some seasoning in 2024. Maybe he's not ready to be a full-time contributor at wide receiver because he's got to kind of learn the ropes a little bit more, but he's ready in 2025 after sort of a get used to the NFL year. That's a player that's pretty interesting. Tez Walker from North Carolina is another one. I saw Steve Smith, the former NFL wide receiver, saying Tez Walker maybe not going to be ready to help you in 2024 a ton, but put him in an NFL scheme, get him with some NFL coaches, shore up some of the things, and he could be ready to take people's jobs in 2025. I kind of like the sound of that. Hey, he's an emergency break glass in case of emergency type of player initially in 2024 and then a key player in 2025. Doesn't that sound like a good investment with a 3rd round pick or a 4th round pick for the Houston Texans? Sounds like a good investment to me. Now, obviously, they've got lots of needs, and if you want to argue you need to address other needs, you need to get rotational players at other spots, and you can even continue to wait on wide receiver past the 4th round and just take a flyer on somebody late, I'll certainly listen to that. I just like this wide receiver class a whole lot more than most recent wide receiver classes, and even picking at 86 or in the 4th round, a wide receiver, you're still getting a good value and a good player and a nice depth piece should contract situations dictate that you need to go to that player on the depth chart, or injury situations in 2024 dictate that you need to go to that player on the depth chart. What say you? Should the Texans still be thinking about a wide receiver in the draft? Let me know in the comment section down below. On your way down there, throw me a thumbs up on the video. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. So much fun stuff coming up in the month of April. I don't want you to miss any of it. You won't miss any of it if you're subscribed to the channel. You watch the videos you're watching right now. I appreciate you. Thanks for watching the video so long. Hope you enjoyed it, and I can't wait till we talk Texans again soon.